Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome to the ISO Show, where we explore the systems, the standards, and innovations shaping how organisations operate responsibly in a complex world, especially in the world of ESG. I'm Mel Blackmore, your host today, and today we're going to be diving into one of the most urgent intersections in business right now, which is artificial intelligence, AI, and sustainability reporting. Now, we've covered ISO standards to some length actually regarding sustainability standards, but I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to be having today. We know that regulatory pressures are increasing and the ESG expectations are evolving as well. And we're finding that a lot of sustainability teams are drowning in data when it comes to ESG. So I'm absolutely delighted that our guest today is going to help us to unpack all of this. So today I'm going to be joined by the head of product at Pulsora, Darayush Mistry. Darayush is a font of all knowledge when it comes to sustainability reporting, as Pulsora are one of the leading sustainability and carbon software platforms, and they're at the forefront of AI-powered sustainability reporting. So we're going to be getting into some of the realities that organisations are facing at the moment, from Excel spreadsheets, which can be pretty messy, to the genuine opportunities and the risks that companies need to watch out for as AI becomes more and more prevalent in our day-to-day life. So let's get started. Hey Darayush, how are you?
Doing great, Mel. How are you doing?
Yes,
Thank you for
very
having
well,
me on
thank
the
you.
ISO show.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining us. So for our ISO show listeners, would you mind by starting by providing a bit of background in terms of your involvement, in terms of how you started working at the intersection of sustainability and technology?
Yeah, totally. So, my career over the last 2 decades has been mostly working on enterprise software. And for those of you who might not be familiar, that's a category of software and technology that most companies use to operationalize their business. And so my career was focused primarily on a category called CRM, which is customer relationship management, and also some affiliated areas like customer experience, e-commerce, content. And, more recently, I also had the good fortune of spending some time at a consumer company, so sort of have a good view both from an enterprise and consumer perspective. And the early part of my career actually started at a company called Siebel Systems, which largely defined the CRM space. And the reason I bring that up is, what I saw and learned at Siebel. I spent close to 10 years out there, was very relevant to when I stepped into the sustainability world. Because, about roughly 15, 20 years ago, almost every VP of sales at a company was running their business out of a set of spreadsheets. And, they would run forecasts, they would ask everyone to update their opportunities, all of it would be in spreadsheets. And then every Friday, they would roll that up and send that to their CFO and their execs, who would use them in their own financial and non-financial, aggregation, right? So from there, 20 years forward, today you can't think of any business that would run itself without really having a CRM, software in the mix somewhere, right? So it's evolved significantly. And the way I look at it is, fast forward to when I joined Pulsora, I saw a very similar and critical need, right? Where companies were essentially running all of their sustainability initiatives out of emails and spreadsheets. They were making multi-decade commitments and trying to follow up on that with a collection of sometimes, rather complex, spreadsheets. And so it looked eerily familiar to me. And, that's sort of my background of how I went, through this journey from starting in CRM, spending many years in there, and now, finally being in sustainability. So my goal here is to, leverage those learnings, leverage whatever newer technologies that we have available and provide it to sustainability users all over the world at, various companies so that they can be successful with their own sustainability outcomes, right, using the Pulsora platform.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for providing that context, as that leads us into a really nice segue into understanding what Pulsora does. So it'd be great if you could just expand on that and just a little bit more about your current role and what your responsibilities are at Pulsora.
Certainly. So, Pulsora, we are a purpose-built platform. We're a AI-forward SaaS platform. For those of you, again, you're not familiar, SaaS is software as a service. So it's primarily you can access Pulsora anywhere across the globe, through a web browser. And what Pulsora does is it helps companies, perform many of the functions that they need to operationalize their sustainability initiatives. So we provide a comprehensive end-to-end platform that goes all the way from collecting all the data, making sure that it's calculated in the right way, it's audit and assurance ready, collecting all the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 information, all the other climate related, like wastewater, biodiversity, people, policy oriented information as well, and then turn all of that into various kinds of sustainability reporting disclosures, and more importantly, being able to stand behind that. So that's what we do at Pulsora, is provide the platform that enables companies and our users to be able to do that. Now, specifically my role at Pulsora, the head of product, it's primarily a role that sits at the intersection of our customers, prospects, and our engineering and design teams. And my goal in this role is to make sure that, whatever we create and build at Pulsora ultimately provides value to our customers in whatever they're looking at as successful outcomes for their own sustainability, initiatives, or in any improvement that they're looking for performance, for their sustainability initiatives. So that's, the primary focus of my role.
Right, and obviously one of the topics today is how AI integrates with sustainability reporting. AI seems to be everywhere at the moment. We're consumed by it. I'm certainly very excited by it, but also it's slightly scary at the same time. Do you remember the moment when it clicked with you that AI could really actually change how sustainability reporting works?
It's a very interesting question. And I do, and it feels just like yesterday, but actually it was like almost 4 years ago. And it was right at the intersection, like I said, when I was stepping into the sustainability role. So, at the very onset of Pulsora, Murad and Inderjeet, the co-founders of Pulsora, I was speaking with them and we were discussing this in, I think, like late 2021. So this was like the early days of, AI and, products like OpenAI and Gemini and others. And I actually had a experience. It's actually one of the LinkedIn posts that I have out there on my profile, where I had, the ability to leverage a very early stage AI tool, to create some long form blog content. And at that time, it was leveraging a very early version of ChatGPT. It was called GPT 2.0, which then became 3.0, and now I think it's like, 5 dot something. So it's evolved significantly since then. But right before, I joined Pulsora, I had that exposure. And what I was able to do with that tool was, with a single line of intent, I was able to create this entire long form blog content. So it went from like writing an outline for me to creating the sections and key bullets, and then elaborating on each of those key bullets and like giving me an entire blog, long form content. And as I was speaking with Inderjeet and Murad, who were looking at, building this company for ESG reporting, it clicked for me. And I was like, wow, like, here's a technology that's emerging, and in very early days at that time, like this was like late 2021. And here's a company that's trying to like, automate and make sure that they can make, sustainability reporting and ESG reporting as easy and efficient as possible and accurate. that's when it clicked for me. And I was like, AI can certainly be used for that. Now, it took us almost 2 years to get to a point where we could actually put it in the product and deliver it to our customers. And interestingly, when we launched Pulsora AI, and this was, I think, in middle to like end of 2024, one of the first features that we enabled through AI was this feature called Write with Pulsora AI. And it essentially allowed, our customers to write long form narrative responses, for various disclosures. Like, we all know, like even today, if you look at a disclosure like CSRD, like 60 to 70% of that is some sort of qualitative narrative kind of content, right? And the assumption that everybody's an expert and everybody can write this and have the right context and all of that can be really augmented with something like Pulsara AI, where they can use that as the starting point, not have the writer's block, and have the right context, and then be able to build on top of that so that they can create their disclosure. So yeah, I mean, it was really like connecting the dots of like doing this thing about 4 years ago, and then having that in Pulsara, and now seeing it evolve into a very I would say essential part of the toolkit for many sustainability professionals out there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned about the qualitative aspect of it, because a lot of organizations and listeners think that ESG software is all about the data and the number crunching, but actually, it needs to be so much more comprehensive than that now, doesn't it? I think especially with like, the double materiality assessment requirements under CSRD, it's becoming a lot more complex in terms of the types of evidence that needs to be provided. So when you think about AI and ESG today, what is it that excites you the most? Because I'm certainly excited about lots of aspects of how AI can be incorporated into, carbon assurance, for example. But just in terms of, what do you think is the most exciting opportunity that it brings? But also, on the flip side, what makes you slightly nervous as well? Because obviously, where there are opportunities, there are risks as well.
Right. No, certainly. I think, the way I look at it is, yes, I think AI has many exciting things going for sustainability, but I think the way I look at it is, going back to the user, right? I think the thing that excites me the most about AI and sustainability is it will actually give sustainability teams and professionals time back that they can then better leverage for actually achieving the outcomes that they're looking at, sort of executing on when they actually got into these roles, right? And I'll tell you from personal experience, right? Like I've had the pleasure of speaking with many sustainability professionals now, and our practitioners, leaders, various roles, and I can tell you, no one ever said that I want to get into sustainability because I want to become an expert at cutting and pasting from various spreadsheets, right? It's like,
That's very true.
I, yeah, and I mean, these are
Mm.
like very qualified professionals, they're experts in their fields, PhDs, and you see them for months on end, like 80% of their time, like working in these, emails and spreadsheets and transferring data over and making sure the right calculations are happening. And it's like, and then when they get done, the clock is reset because now it's the new year and it's like the cycle all over again. Like it feels like almost like a hamster wheel for many of them, right? So I feel
Mhm.
like the most exciting thing for me from an AI perspective for sustainability and our sustainability professionals or users is that it will give them that time back from the more, I would say, repetitive, mundane, whatever, kind of tasks, in some cases, even more strategic tasks, so that they can actually focus on the outcomes and, what is it that they actually want to execute on and what actually, sort of excites them, kind of a thing, right? Now,
Yeah, and I think I
like,
can see. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say
oh,
we've
God.
seen that, um, you know, using technology in this way, it can really help to um, just accelerate the not just the about the breadth, but the depth as well. I think in terms of the sustainability information that can be collated, analysed, and then reported on. And I think in some cases it doesn't just say it's kind of minutes or hours; it's actually days and weeks, which is quite significant. Could you just expand on, an example on how it can help to save a sustainability professional time?
Yeah, certainly. So, like a really good example that we run into these days is, as we all know, like data collection is actually a multi-step process, right? It's referred to as data collection as though it's like in some document and you just collect it, but it's actually a multi-step process where you identify the sources, you have data in various formats that you need to normalize, you have to take care of like, making sure that various types of data are converted appropriately, the unit conversions, and you have to make sure that everything has backing information, evidence, all of the kinds of things, right? But one great example that has emerged recently that, many of our customers are really excited about and have started using is the ability to, once the data is collected, be able to pre-audit them so that they know their readiness even before they get into an audit and assurance cycle, right? And what that means is what the AI is doing is acting like a person, in this case, a auditor with maybe some limited skills currently, but making sure that, all of the things that a auditor would need to then evaluate and, go through the process is prepped and ready, and if there are any gaps, those gaps are identified up front, or if there were any issues with rationalizing or normalizing the data, all of those things are taken care of, so that you have like something that's less revised and looked at when you're in the actual cycle. And so I feel like that's a great example we're seeing emerging where AI agents can take on that work. Now, it's still limited because it's early days of these AI agents, but it's just really exciting to see how companies are starting to leverage that.
It's almost like it's going from an option, using AI, to being a necessity almost for sustainability teams. What's your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're seeing, especially in the conversations in early 2026, and I think even in late last year, is many companies are now moving from the mode of let's try AI to like let's use AI, right? And that's what's rapidly making this more of a necessity versus like a nice to have or something we can consider, because there is, I would say, top-down alignment on recognizing that this is a technology that's available, that can be an accelerant, and all teams within a company, including the sustainability team, should figure out how to best leverage it so that you can have the right positive outcomes out of it, right? And I think one of the things that really makes this a necessity is going back again to the users and the teams that we focus on, right? Like the situation on the ground has not changed, right? Like sustainability teams are really still very, I would say, resource constrained. They're often small teams supporting large operational footprints and global centers, and in many cases, the disclosures have become more stringent or more mandatory, and the pressure has increased on these teams. So anything that they can get as a tool or a technology that can help augment and make sure that the right things are happening, from a sustainability reporting perspective, from an insights and analysis perspective, I think they're now ready to adopt that, and that's what's moving it on this spectrum from like nice to have, let's try something, to this is a necessity, because the situation on the ground is still the same. Like even though there's AI everywhere, it's still the same teams and the same business problems, but even more pronounced in many cases, right? Like the whole focus on scope 3 for many companies, which has been like a huge challenge for many sustainability teams. Now they see a path by leveraging AI to be able to get over some of those or many of those challenges, right? So it's increasingly becoming a necessity from those perspectives for many of these companies and teams.
I mean, talking about challenges, I mean, I'd just like to circle back to the questions I asked you earlier about, the opportunities, but the risk. What do you think are the risks, though, if we become kind of too reliant on it? Or what are the kind of the red flags we should be looking out for?
Yeah, I would say there's many, but the one that stands out is I would say treating AI as this, use your favorite analogy like magic wand, silver bullet, whatever you want to call it, right? I think that's the biggest risk because again, the way I see it is like the core sort of needs of a sustainability team are making sure that they can execute on their initiatives, they can make sure they're getting the right outcomes, and they're doing it in a trusted, accurate, assured way, right? So that they can really stand behind it. And trying to feel like, oh, AI can solve all of this if I just throw things at it, I think is the biggest risk. And I would say where a lot of the initial initiatives stumble. I'll tell you from personal experience, like we've run into conversations where literally it's been proposed that, oh, we just put all of the content or data in AI and it'll just figure it out, right? And I think that kind of like wave the magic wand kind of an approach is what really makes me nervous that that would lead to incorrect outcomes and expectations. And this is not new, right? Like I think many of us have seen many transitions in technology, and there's actually this thing called Amara's law. It's actually a Stanford professor who had come up with this rule that says that as humans we severely overestimate like technology outcomes in the short term and severely underestimate that in the long term, right? And I think AI is going through that same cycle where everyone's severely overestimating it, thinking it'll do everything, and then you go through that trough of disillusionment or whatever Gardner calls it. And then, in the long term, I feel it has a lot of promise, and I think it will deliver. And we're like, severely underestimating that in the long term view of like 5 to 10 years kind of a thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because at Pulsar, obviously, you've been integrating AI into the platform for a number of years now. So it'd be interesting to explore where you're seeing that AI integration actually make a real difference in sustainability reporting today.
Certainly. So, there are some areas that have naturally emerged as like a great fit for, AI. It's around data collection, getting more ad hoc reporting and insights, getting a starting point for a sustainability reporting or disclosure really quickly, figuring out various options for various strategies that you might be interested in. Like those are all like, areas that are emerging rapidly where sustainability can make a difference. But I feel like the one area that clearly stands out, and honestly, it might seem very foundational, is I go back to data collection, right? I think I feel that one of the most relevant and demonstrable sort of differences we'll see in AI and sustainability is around that work of data collection. And I feel like, it can truly not just help from an efficiency perspective in the sense like do things faster. It can actually make a difference in your data because it can discover gaps much faster. It can help, sort of create estimates much faster. It can rationalize and normalize data much faster than a human can do. So it's not just the speed, but also the quality and the consistency of the underlying data can be improved, which is a net positive for any organization because it's like the better you can, sort of measure and track these things, the better you can manage it and, improve the performance, right? So I feel like it's the very foundational work of data collection. And we see this a lot with our customers. There is a huge interest in using our AI agents around data collection and being able to do, sort of the gap filling and the estimations and the, rationalization of units and normalization and things like that. so that the data is prepped and ready in the right format for your sustainability reporting.
Mm. Yeah, I think just touching on what you mentioned about the human aspect. I mean, we know that AI is so much quicker than the human brain when it comes to certain tasks, scarily so. And I've been involved with ISO 42001, the AI standard which covers risk assessments, and within that there is definitely a common thread throughout it that you still need that human judgment, especially when it comes to managing risk associated with AI. So, I mean, based on your experience of ESG reporting, which aspects of it still need that human judgment that can't be automated away?
I think I sort of view these two things as complementary, and this is how we've built Pulsara AI as well. Like we're true believers that there's always human in the loop with AI technology, and it's more augmentation and sort of complementary to each other, right? So, there's sort of degrees of where automation will be higher and human in the loop will be lower, and in areas where human in the loop will be absolutely critical and you can't really automate it through AI kind of a thing, right? So I think there'll be degrees of that, and it's very apparent, like even in areas like materiality assessment, or figuring out like how to execute on your decarbonization strategy, which can be very, very specific to an organization and what its values are and what its goals are. And you really need that human judgment in there, right? Or any kind of risk assessment where AI can certainly give you all the options, but at the end of the day, all those options will have to be synthesized and again applied based on what are your company goals and objectives and what are you trying to do, right? So I feel like human in the loop will always be there, and there are certain areas where it'll be really pronounced. And I go back again to the sustainability reporting aspect, right? Yes, AI can collect all the data. It can create initial drafts of reports really fast. Maybe it can even help you sort of clear the rough edges and make this like presentable, so you can maybe even try using it as sort of like the final report, which I don't think we're there yet. But at the end of the day, the humans still have to be able to stand behind that data and the explanations and the narratives that are in there and be able to provide their own judgment, right? Versus like relying on a blurb that AI wrote based on, some peer or other kind of information that it, saw out there. Because I think what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, LLMs and AI technology, as great as they are, the way they have been built is to look at the large sort of set of data that's out there, pretty much all the content and data that's out there on the planet, be able to synthesize it and provide you suggestions and options. But it's certainly not there, and I don't think will be there for a while, where it can truly replace a human judgment, right? So even something as simple as writing a narrative, the human has to be able to synthesize that and be able to stand behind it versus just taking a narrative that came out of AI, right? And I think that's where the human in the loop and the human judgment will always be there, even for something like disclosure reporting and data collection, which could potentially largely be automated using AI, right?
Yeah, thank goodness we're not quite redundant yet. Well, I don't. I mean, obviously, I'm speaking from experience from the verification side as well. So, and I think that obviously verification is there because there is a lack of trust, transparency, and credibility when it comes to carbon reporting, and thankfully there is still a human aspect involved with actually checking, methodologies used, accuracy, cross-checking against different conversion factors for different countries, that the correct conversion factors are used, and that sort of thing. But we do come across, I'm speaking on behalf of Carbonology as CEO, I know that our verifiers do come across an awful lot of messy, unstructured data files. Like they could be in PDFs, they could be in messy Excel docs, it could be invoices, supplier docs. It's quite unusual, actually, quite rare for a really comprehensive GHG inventory to be available with links to all the data feeds that go into actually producing that. How does AI help to deal with all those messy and unstructured types of data assets?
Yeah, that's a good question. See, I think the way we look at it is, you know, the process and what you need as an outcome out of it still largely remains the same. It's how you're doing it and how adaptable is it is where AI creates the most impact, right? Or how quickly can you do it as well. So, for example, when we look at like the world of our day-to-day world of like many sustainability folks with, working with all kinds of spreadsheets, all kinds of documents, in fact, PDFs, whatever kinds of documents that are out there, emails also in many cases, um, you know, bringing all that information together, being able to normalize it and make it so that it's, the right information with the right supporting documentation and evidence, and being able to use that further upstream in their reporting and their analysis in actually making decisions. It's not like that process is changing because of AI. It's just that AI gives us a technology platform that is really adaptable, right? So like the way I look at it is if someone were to do this with like, technology just maybe like, let's say 2 years ago, which was just traditional, read data, use some sort of OCR, optical character recognition, and be able to like bring all this data in. They would have to write code. They would have to build pipelines. They would have to make sure that, that doesn't break when the documents change or the disclosures change, right? With AI, you get this adaptability of doing all of those things in a way where you can express this in more natural language, and you can change it very rapidly when things change. So if your source documents change, or how you want to consume this, on the disclosure side changes, AI is, hyper adaptable to that. And I think that's how AI really helps teams, is it's providing this technology platform that is highly adaptable and yet highly usable by non-technical people, right? And I think that's where the real change of how they can work with their unstructured data and documents comes in, because technology can solve that problem. It wouldn't solve it, with the speed and the efficiency that AI does, but it can solve the problem. But it creates these brittle, hard to use, often only technical people can work on kind of solutions. And then AI comes in and creates this adaptable, any user can use it and make their outcomes happen kind of an approach for the same unstructured data. And I think that's where the value lies.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think one thing we haven't touched upon is from a regulatory perspective, obviously, there is an increase in mandatory and voluntary disclosures. Mandatory could be CSRD, for example, or obviously there are more regs now in California and New York and on Australia as well. So we are still seeing an increase in the requirement for reporting from a regulatory perspective. Do you think that the regulators are going to take kindly to AI being used in sustainability reporting? How do you think that they're going to react to AI being used?
I think, I mean, some of it we will see, but I think the way I rationalize it is based on my past experience and what I have seen, sort of in the evolution of technology and markets, primarily around an area where I was exposed to when, I was in a role at NetSuite, where I was, heading the CRM and e-commerce product. Was NetSuite, the large part of NetSuite's business was ERP and financial products. And what I saw over there was that, when companies were creating their, financial reporting documents and ultimately, submitting it to the SEC or any other regulatory body across the globe, the regulators didn't really care about where or how this was created from. What they really cared about was, is this accurate? Is this transparent? Does this have backing information behind it, right? And that's what they really cared about. And if you see, most of the regulations are built around that. So they don't really care if you put together a financial report like a person working throughout the year manually calculating this, or you do it through a sophisticated, financial, like a cloud ERP, like a NetSuite, right? Like regulators don't really care about that. So I think I draw parallels from that same world to say, I don't think sustainability regulators will really care how the data is being created. I think their focus will still remain on, is this meeting the guidelines? Is this accurate representation of data? Is this transparent so that we can check this all the way to the source, right? And is this something that has enough supporting information with it that we can quickly validate that someone's, not misleading or intentionally or otherwise kind of a thing, right? So I think that's what regulators will care about. And I feel like actually in the, I would say near to, midterm, I think it will actually increase the expectations of regulators in the sustainability space, because they will be like, previously, this information was really hard to get. Like, how did you get the numbers? What's the transparency? I think AI and tools like AI, including platforms around sustainability like ours, will provide regulators the ability to raise the bar and expectations for companies to say, you should be able to provide us this information and this level of transparency and assurance because you have tools that can enable you to do that, right? So I feel like I think it will be a net positive actually for regulators, and they'll probably raise the bar saying that we want more accurate, verifiable, assured data because we know that you have the tools that can help you do that and now do that, really quickly in a very smart way. Right. So I think that's sort of how I look at how regulators will most likely look at it.
I mean, obviously, we've predominantly talked about AI being, a positive thing in our chat today. But playing devil's advocate here, I think if we look at the flip side, obviously, there's quite a lot of controversy about using AI from a sustainability perspective. So yeah, I think that there is some irony here in using AI for sustainability. Is it part of the climate problem, or is it part of the solution, or both? I mean, what's your view on that, Darayush?
Okay, so this is a serious concern, and I feel that AI is definitely part of the solution, but it is also the problem, and it's because it's a very resource intensive technology, right? Like it consumes a lot of energy, it consumes a lot of water, so it is very resource intensive. But I think the way I look at it is, similar to, let's say, other technology waves that have happened in the past. Maybe the most recent one being the mobile, generation and the mobile evolution, right? Like when mobile phones came out, hardly anyone talked about environmental impact or sustainability, right? And today we have over 6 billion plus, mobile phones of different types on the planet, and it is a huge problem. And what the consumers and the companies and the regulators have done over time is made sure that we can make this as sustainable as possible at the source, right? So like companies like Apple, Google, Samsung, many others have now started very closely tracking the footprint of these mobile devices and making sure that they become as sustainable as possible at the core and then throughout its life cycle as well, right? So I feel like AI will go through that same evolution, and I think at the end of the day, again, sustainability is a multifaceted domain, right? So they will see pressure from their consumers and customers to make sure that consumers want to use technology, and most certainly AI that's more sustainable as well. And obviously companies intrinsically will move in this direction. Like for example, right, this is maybe a lesser known fact for many, but AI not just consumes a lot of electricity and energy, it consumes a lot of water as well that's used for cooling, right? And many companies will have to head in the direction where they'll have to figure out whether they can use air cooling, they can use salt water, they can use other ways of doing this where innovation will help drive that, right? And I think that's part of the evolutionary curve that we see with other technologies in the past as well. Again, drawing a parallel with mobile devices, right? So I think that's one aspect. The other is that I think we should always look at this as an equation of, what is it that is being impacted and what is the outcome, right? And be able to measure that, because if I look at the parallel of like, the example we were talking, through many of our interactions about data collection, right? If AI can do this in an efficient way and bring down, that effort from like months to maybe even days or hours in some cases, and then looking at that same impact and outcome of someone who had to travel to their office and use certain resources for months to be able to achieve that same outcome, that carbon footprint has to be compared with the carbon footprint of what they achieved with AI as well, to understand and equate that. And I think largely that is where AI will head, is like, not just black and white, like use or don't use. I think it'll be like, how do we use it more purposefully so that it achieves a net positive impact. And I think, but it's a given. I think this is a problem. I think everyone using AI and everyone creating AI products has to acknowledge that and figure out, what's the most responsible way of addressing this and making sure that the right things are being done to
Absolutely.
not make this create impact.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting debate, and I think you've looked at both aspects, um, and articulated that quite eloquently. So thanks for. I think it's definitely give our listeners food for thought in terms of the positives and negatives. And I think, although there is a debate around it at the moment, I don't actually think that there is an awful lot of research to back it up, that it's that negative. When you compare it to, the days, weeks, months of still using servers, but and to come to the same result, but potentially much slower. Which, yeah, I think it'd be really interesting a few years from now to see what the environmental footprint is for particular exercises and using AI compared to other kind of manual processes that we may have used in the past. A really interesting topic. So yeah, it's been an absolute delight and pleasure speaking with you today, Darayush. So thank you very much for letting me pick your brains on all things AI and sustainability reporting. That's been really interesting. But I'd just like to leave you with one question, if that's okay. So we have a lot of listeners on the show that some will be sustainability leaders, but others will be taking this on as a new area of responsibility. And the buck stops with them ultimately. If you could give one piece of advice to a sustainability leader, either that's somebody who's kind of new to reporting, or they may actually be quite experienced in it, but what kind of if they're looking at using AI in context with ESG reporting, what advice would you give them if they're just starting to get involved with this journey?
Certainly. Actually, before I get into that, I would like to echo that, thanks for inviting me. I truly enjoyed this conversation as well. And, it's been a pleasure talking about all of these things. And I think this interaction also helps me, think about and learn different perspectives as well. So thanks for inviting me. Now, I think the one thing I would, sort of say, I think about a lot, and I, sort of provide this as input to anyone who's considering this, is that AI is there today, right? And I think whether you're a practitioner, a leader, whatever role you're in, I would encourage you to identify a problem space where you can apply it in a measured way and start using it. That's the only way you'll be able to really understand, the effort and the impact and, the outcomes it creates for you, right? And in some ways, I feel like, technologies like AI are literally meant for domains like sustainability, right? Like if you look at like the general characteristics of AI, right? It's like it works great with unstructured data. It works great when things are a bit messy. It works across, like, it doesn't care about like industries, geographies, domains, things like that. It can cross-cut across many things. Those are the areas where AI typically shines. Now, you can take all of those aspects and say that is what sustainability professionals are looking at, right? They're looking at a lot of unstructured, messy data. They're looking at cross-cutting data across many domains, across geographies, industries. So it almost looks like, AI was made for sustainability, right? And so I feel like really encouraged. And I would say, I think the best way of doing this is trying it out, identify a problem space and apply it. And I feel like it will not just truly give you a better tool and platform for, getting better sustainability reports. I personally feel that it will give you the leverage to actually run and create better sustainable outcomes for your business. So I think that's where the power lies of the intersection of AI and sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. So start with the problem, and we all have lots of problems that we're trying to solve when it comes to sustainability. So I think that's a good starting point. And to look to how you can use alternative solutions that are out there. So I'm guessing that on the Pulsora website there are some examples of how solutions can be provided then to some of those problems. And what's the best way of being able to get in contact with you, Darayush? You mentioned earlier on about some posts that you did on LinkedIn. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you or to find out a little bit more about Pulsora?
Yeah, certainly. I think the best way would be to go to pulsora.com and contact us. I think that would be the most efficient way of doing this. And if there are any other questions, there is content available about Pulsora. So if you contact us, we can reach out with more specific content that might be tailored to someone's needs as well. So I would say the best thing would be to start with pulsora.com.
Okay, fantastic. We'll include links to that LinkedIn group and the Pulsar website in the show notes. So for our iSocial listeners that may be driving or doing some other activities whilst they're listening to this, if you just go and check out the show notes, we'll include the links in there. So it sounds as though there's a community there that you can, ask questions and look at information that people within that group are posting. So that's really valuable. Thank you very much, Darayush, once again for your time and sharing those insights with us today on the ISO show.
Certainly. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.